So what I haven't really done yet is a video on my camping setup from outside. I've done it laying down and described it, but I haven't really showed anything. So the process goes like this. When I get where I'm going, the ground is soft here, so I have to put a big foot under my kickstand so that my kickstand doesn't sink in. Usually you use these on asphalt on hot days because the kickstand will dig in and scar the asphalt, which is kind of rude. And if it's your own stuff, it's destructive. It's destructive either way, but it's rude to do it to somebody else's. So the first step is make sure the bike is standing upright and staying put. And then once I start unloading my camping gear, the first step of that is to wrap the tree huggers around the tree. And these are wide webbing here. They're not nylon webbing. Nylon webbing is pretty common. These are polyester webbing, and the difference is polyester does not stretch even if it gets wet, whereas nylon will stretch over time, and I think it's even worse if it gets wet. So there's one of these on each side. This is wrapped several times because it's a long strap and the tree is narrow. On the other side, it's only wrapped twice because it's a shorter strap. The tree is still pretty narrow, but it's only wrapped twice there. So the first step is to wrap the tree straps around there. Now, the tree straps are connected to the suspension, and this is Dyneema hollow braided cord turned into a Whoopie sling with a Dutch hook on the end of it. So from this metal piece here all the way up to the tree strap, that's like one piece when it packs away. The tree strap and the suspension does not come apart ever, unless I have to rebuild it or do something or whatever, but they stay together. Now the Whoopie sling is this loop here, and this part here, it's going to be impossible to see. It's hollow braided cord, so what you do is you push, after you loop it, you push the end of the cord through the center of itself and back out the other end. And it works like a Chinese finger trap, so that the harder you pull on these ends, the tighter the finger trap binds to the cord so it won't slip. This is the slack. This is all slack that can be used to make this loop of the Whoopie sling longer. So I can use trees that are 30 feet, 10 yards apart, 10 meters, I don't know, maybe metric people looking at this. But here the trees are real close together. So I got about a 4, 8, 9 or 10 inch loop here. And on the other end, it's not much different. Once the tree huggers are in place, I can hook the hammock. The hammock has these loops made out of the same Dyneema cable or cord. I can just hook them into the eye of the Dutch hook. And Dutch hook is it's a trademark name. It's a brand name. A guy in Pennsylvania whose name is Dutch makes them. Once that goes in there, the hammock is hung from that. And the hammock is a double layer of the lightest ripstop nylon that I could find. It looks camouflage, but it's not. It's actually flowers. It's just green leaves and flowers, but it does look kind of camouflage. Over the hammock, there is a bug net. This is like it was really cheap. I got it at Walmart. It was like a shelter. It's a gigantic square shelter. And I just kind of cut it apart until I had the size of the fabric that I needed to sew this together. I use a ridgeline, and I've never heard of anybody who doesn't use a ridgeline and never has problems. But people who use ridgelines, once you get the ridgeline to the right length, you don't have problems. You can make these as tight as you want. The idea is to get the ridgeline taut. And the ridgeline is a fixed length, and it becomes a straight line once there's weight in the hammock. And what that does is controls the sag of the hammock. And the sag of the hammock is the dial for comfort. And you get it just right for yourself, and you'll be comfortable every time you lay in it. It'll be the same sag, you'll have the same lay. Then the only trick is to get the ends of the hammock where the Dutch hooks are at the right height. And basically the right height just means you want your feet to be, well, the Dutch hook for the feet, this one's red is head, the other end is green. Green is not red, so green is feet. You want your feet to be 6 or 8 inches higher than your head, and that helps you to not slide your torso to the very center of the hammock. It helps to keep you at one end so you're not using up all the slack of the fabric for yourself. So that's how you hang a hammock. After that, the tarp goes up. The tarp is on, again, this is Dutch gear. There's a hook at the end of this, and it's a tiny, tiny hook. It's hard to see. I mean, it's as wide as my fingertip. It's titanium. All the Dutch stuff that I have is titanium. I tie a knot. It's a knot. It's like a part of a trucker's hitch. I don't even know what this knot is called, but it helps to get a triangle in the tarp's ridgeline. And the triangle helps because the hammock string is between them, and it allows the hammock to swing. If I move around or if a breeze happens, it'll swing. And if this triangle is not here, if this hook is just up against the tree, if it swings, it twangs, which is just obnoxious. So I don't want that. So there's a hook on this end, and then I pull the tarp's ridgeline to the other tree. Again, I go above the suspension with it, so it kind of goes around it. And then another Dutch piece. This is called a wasp. And the wasp it's an adjustable hanger. It'll slide up and down this cordage. Oh, I got a spider hanging on me. No more hitchhiking, dude. It's an adjustable piece, so it'll slide up and down. Once you get it in place, there's a little itty bitty loop that goes around the tail of the wasp and keeps it from sliding now. Then it's got a hook in front that allows you to, once you wrap the tree, you pull it into the hook. That gives you leverage, double your leverage to pull the ridgeline really taut. And then it's got 2 little grooves. One in the front looks like a bug's antenna here, and then one in the back looks like a wing. And you go through the antenna and then through the wing, and the wing kind of pinches it so that it stays in place. And the tighter you pull that, the harder it stays in place. So I try not to pull it too tight because it makes it very difficult to undo if you pull it too tight. I try to leave this tag end a little slack. And again, I have lots of slack here. I can put my hammock between trees that are much further apart than these. These, everything's in the way, but this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.5 paces apart, which is like 5, 6, 6.5 yards, 6.5 meters, 15, 17 feet apart. If with narrow trees like this, I could probably go to like 35 feet, 10, 11 and a half yards, 11.5 meters, whatever. So that's pretty cool. And the tarp itself is on, these are called prusik knots. Really hard to see, but the prusik knot, as long as you pull on this where the tarp pulls on, that won't move. to make that not move. Take a hike, spider. To make that move, you have to push on this end of it. And it's actually really hard to do because this ridge line and this prusik line are the same size. And ideally you want the prusik to be the line, the cordage itself, to be half the size of the other line. So at this time, there's no way to do that. But I think I'm going to talk to Dutch about it and see if he can make these wasps and the hook on the other end for cordage that's twice this big. Because I don't think you can get cordage half this size, but I know I can get it twice this big because look, here it is. So if I could make that out of this larger Dyneema, these would slide a lot easier, I think. And then down the bottom of the tarp, what pulls this out, the tarp has webbing here. On the webbing is shock cord. It's nice to have some give here in case the wind blows. You don't want these to slack up. At the bottom of the shock cord, here's some more Dutch wear gear. And these aren't even titanium. These are just aluminum because they don't really need to do anything. They're little adjusters. They go down to the tent stakes. And then you adjust them by just pulling. Again, I have lots of slack because sometimes you're on the side of a hill and the lower side of the hill needs to be real long. And you just put a half hitch knot on these, and these are, it's probably hard to see right here. These are, they have a narrow waist, so the half hitch never comes out of these. I have used these a bunch of times. It's shocking how well these things work. And again, they're tiny. It's the length of it is less than the width of my finger, you know, and the width of it is only slightly wider than this cordage, which is, this cord is I think 2.5 millimeters or 1/8 of an inch, I think is the right size, what it's called. Down here I got my tent stakes. These I splurged on. I went with titanium tent stakes. No reason, just I wanted fancy tent stakes. It just makes me happy to use them, so I got those. And that's it. That's my hammock and tarp. To stay warm in a hammock, however, you need quilts, because if you lie in a sleeping bag or lie on something, you'll compress the insulation and then the air will come and rob your heat from you. So what you need is an under quilt, something that goes completely under the hammock. And it's a down quilt, because down packs down really well, and it's all shock cord so that it pulls tight against my body. Yes, we're all impressed by your big truck while we're trying to sleep. Thank you. It's hard to show how this works in low light. I'd have to stand back and show you. But basically, the under quilt literally goes under the entire hammock and bug net and everything. I have another quilt inside that I wear on top of me, and it's got the bottom of it is sewn together to make what we call a foot box so that it doesn't slide off my feet. And then the bug net is just a sleeve. It's like a triangular shaped sleeve, and the bottom of it has a hole in it, and the hole's got a channel with more shock cord in it. So I climb in through this hole, and once I'm laying in the hammock, this hole pretty much goes below my butt and seals itself up against the bottom of the hammock. And then I pull the under quilt under that. So when I'm laying in it, it looks more like this. Again, everything's on shock cord, and I've got cord locks here so I can adjust it up and down and get the tension right at the ends are gathered. I got to get the tension right there, and they actually kind of fall into place. They were pretty easy. And those are the quilts. You've seen the bags that go inside. The bag with my water bottle in it, I still have to redesign so I can get more stuff to fit in it more efficiently. But for now, I've got the bag that I put the hammock itself in, hangs up here with a little mitten hook. I use a bunch of these little teeny mitten hooks. They're just itty bitty things. Cheap on Amazon, like 20 of them for $10. That bag has my eyeglasses in it because I don't want anything else in that bag. I don't want my eyeglasses scratched up. This bag is the one that the tarp gets put into, and it's a bigger bag because it gets the tarp and the suspension. So everything else that's in my pockets goes in this bag. That's where my keys go, my wallet, my chapstick, anything that's in my pockets goes in that bag. And then at night, I already took them out to put them away, but the ridgeline itself, because it hangs pretty far above me, once there's weight in the hammock, the ridgeline raises up, the hammock sinks down. There's actually quite a bit of room, height-wise. I can hang clothes off of it. You know, I wouldn't put them in there to drip dry because they drip on me, but I can hang my clothes, or I can hang my socks there. I can do all that kind of stuff. My shoes stay outside. I have a little piece of tarpaulin, and this is just a plastic tarp because they're pretty rugged, and I just pin it down with a couple of stakes. Again, they're the titanium ones. I wouldn't have paid for titanium gear. They came in a 6-pack, not a 4-pack. So I had the 2 extra ones, so they go there. And there's my camp chair. That's a little, it's a knockoff. It's an Amazon knockoff. No, it's hooked on a root. This is an Amazon knockoff of a Helinox ultralight. The Helinox chairs are like 105, 110 last time I checked, and these are like $20 on Amazon. And what I like about that is it packs down smaller than any other chair I could find. This is the smallest on motorcycle camping. That's the most important thing. You've got limited room. Weight does not matter as much. So the ultralight campers are guys and women who walk and carry all their stuff. So the weight is the most important factor. For me, the bike's carrying the weight. I really don't care what it weighs. You know, if it bottoms out the suspension, that's a problem. But until that point, I really don't care what it weighs. I just need it to pack down small so it can fit in a saddlebag or a tail trunk or my tank bag. And I really don't want it in the tank bag because that's the stuff I ride with every day. Even if I was just going to a friend's house or something, I've got my tank bag and the things I need are in there. So this is the chair that packs down the smallest, and that's what I carry. Now all this stuff, the hammock, the bug net, the tarp, the not the cordage itself, but the Whoopie slings and the loops that I have here, the ridgeline, all this stuff I made myself, or a couple of things my mother made. The bag my mother made for me, and the tarp was a kind of complex shape, so she helped me with that. Tarps, any kind of, tarps basically, because you pull them taut and there's gravity and tension and all that kind of stuff. They wind up not being straight. They wind up being an arc. And that arc is a mathematical figure called a catenary. And it's not the same as a parabola. It's a very specific shape, but any cordage, any cable, any chain that is suspended between 2 objects will hang in a catenary, and you can. It's like a fractal, and no matter what scale you look at, that hanging object, that hanging cordage or chain will fit in the catenary. It will still be described mathematically the same, just with larger or wider area. So the idea with a tarp is you want to cut it in catenaries, because if you cut it in straight lines, anything outside of this catenary would become slack and would flap around in the breeze and make noise and help you not sleep. So we didn't do perfect catenaries, and that's why you can see there's like wrinkles in the tarp, but we got it close enough so that it doesn't make noise. I don't notice it. The only noise I ever hear on my tarp is like tree litter or rain or stuff. So that was pretty good. And the catenaries were, I knew about them. I didn't know how to make them, but my mom came up with a good idea for tracing them and designing them, and she helped me sew the curves, because I'm a terrible sewer. I can do the straight lines okay, but curves are outside of my expertilage. That's not a real word. Hello, Mr. Cricket. I wish you'd tell your big green cricket friends to shut up. It's so funny. I pulled up and I took my helmet off, and it was completely silent. And I'm like, man, this is going to be a nice, quiet place to sleep. This is awesome. And then I took out one of my earplugs, and I heard the noise that you're hearing now. And it is deafening. I couldn't hear my neighbors, who were, 50 yards away, maybe even less. I could not hear their music. They were playing music that was stumping. When I walked over there, I could hear it, but I can't hear it from here over these crickets. And I guess the earplugs I was wearing were just perfectly attenuated to their sound. So if they keep me awake, I'll just put the earplugs back in. But that's about it. That's all I can think of to describe for my camping setup, if anyone's interested in that. More campers. Good luck finding a spot. I keep seeing people go up and come down, even though it's well after dark. That's it. Good night.